So, dear students, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Today we have to finish the chapter on antidepressant, and so I have to explain you two syntheses, very easy. And then we will start with the next chapter about the derivatives of morphine. And then next week we'll have I will explain you the last chapter about anti-inflammatory drugs, and then the course is finished. Okay, so I want to show you this. The first synthesis of today is the synthesis of imipramine. Imipramine, we have already described its activity, is able to inhibit the reuptake of several neurotransmitters, so it is a not specific reuptake inhibitor. What about its structure? Okay, we can use the ChemDraw. I can share monitor. Okay. So the chemical structure 676, if you remember. Okay. Another one here. And then a nitrogen atom to substituent. Okay. A 676 system. How we can synthesize this system? We can apply the retrosynthetic approach here. Okay, so at the beginning, perhaps we can open the linear chain, so because it's not difficult to insert the side chain on the system. And then we have to synthesize 676 system. This one. Once again, we can open the tricyclic system this way. For example, here. And then here. So we have to build this system by starting from the right half, for example, this one. This means that we can start from this compound and then here and two moles of this one in a strong basic condition. Strong basic condition, NH2, for example. Why a strong base? There are two acidic protons, this one. Because the negative charge of the conjugated base the negative charge is shared on the aromatic ring, and so in presence of a strong base we can have the formation of this species. This one. A moment. I need a carbon atom with one nitrogen and a negative charge. Yeah. This one. Okay, with a nitro group, of course, in this position. And this compound is able to react with the 1 mole of this compound giving a nucleophilic substitution on the carbon atom of the starting reagent. So we need 2 moles of the same reagent in a strong basic condition. Perhaps we can use only 1 mole of the strong base, perhaps, yeah, because I needed the formation of the nucleophilic species, only 1 mole of this. This 1 mole can attack the other 1 mole of the starting reagent. What is the product by this reaction? This one. See here. Here. Just a moment. This one. Nitro group NO2. Here. And here we have a strange situation, because during this attack we have the loss of 1 molecule of hydrochlorhydric acid. This means that this carbon remains a Cl, and the other we have 2 hydrogen. So we have a nucleophilic attack on the starting reagent, you see, to give the formation of the first carbon-carbon bond. At this point, we are in a very basic condition. It is possible to have a loss of another molecule of hydrochlorhydric acid. So we can write again minus HCl, and then the other intermediate is this molecule, this one, with a double bond in this position. So we start from 2 moles of this halogenated compound. On 1 mole we have the formation of the nucleophilic species. This species is able to give an attack to the other mole of the starting reagent. We have the formation of the first carbon-carbon bond, and then we are in a very strong base environment, and we can have the loss of another molecule of hydrochloric acid to give a double bond in this position. This point, we can make a reduction, because if you remember, we need a single bond in this position, and we need an amino group in this position, not a nitro group. We can make a reduction with the hydrogen and with the catalyst, with a special catalyst or another type of reduction. And this reaction is not difficult, and we can have the formation of these species. Here we have a single bond, and here we have 2 amino function, 1 and 2. And then we can warm this mixture, this compound, and we get finally our system. This one. So you see a lot of different intermediates. Just to explain how we can start from 2 moles of this halogenated compound to have this 6-7-6 system. Have you any questions? Is it clear for you? At home? Any questions? Okay. At this point, once again, we have already seen that it's possible the insertion of a side chain in this position by using, for example, a strong base, once again, because I have to increase the basicity of these nitrogen atoms. So with a strong base, for example, once again, sodium amide, what you want, we can take the proton away, and then we can have the formation of a minus charge, you see, and then we can make a reaction with Cl, CH2, 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 and methyl. So we have already seen this type of reaction. You know, it's another nucleophilic substitution on this carbon atom, and then we can introduce the side chain in strong base condition, just to increase the basicity of this nitrogen atom. Questions? Comments? Any comments? No? Okay. This is the synthesis of imipramine, where there is a nitrogen atom on the 7-member ring, in the central 7-member ring. Now, we'll see. You see here. Okay, if you want, we can briefly describe again the reaction. Okay, just a moment. Okay. Here. Strong base, we have the formation of the minus charge. The minus charge is able to give an attack on the other molecule of the starting reagent. Formation, if you remember, of the hydrochloric acid disposition, and then we have the loss of another molecule of chlorhydric acid. Reduction with hydrogen of the double bond in this position and the reduction of the two nitro groups to give the amino group. And then by warming, we can have the closure of the central 7-member ring. And then once again, strong base, sodium hydride, very strong. We can take this proton away. The minus charge is able to give an attack on the side chain to give imipramine. Okay. Now, amitriptyline. Amitriptyline is characterized by a double bond instead of the nitrogen atom in the central 7-member ring. This synthesis is very easy. Why? Because fortunately we have, okay, we can draw on ChemDraw, just a moment. This one, new document. This one. Okay. The chemical structure of this compound, once again. So, and methyl. Okay. If you want, we can apply retrosynthetic approach once again. So we can open the structure at this point. And to form this system, this complete aliphatic system, we can start from a ketone. This ketone, called dibenzosuberon. It's commercially available. I used this compound in lab for the synthesis of particular compounds, so we can buy this compound on the market. And then we have to introduce a carbon chain. If you remember, the polarization of a ketone is the carbon has a light positive charge, the oxygen is more electronegative, has a partial negative charge. So we have to form a carbon-carbon bond. This is the most important reaction in organic chemistry. because in this case we need a positive carbon atom and a negative carbon atom. So we have to form both of these carbon atoms. And if I have this compound, CH2, nitrogen. If you remember, if we have this halogenated compound, the charge of the carbon close to the halogen is positive, because if you remember, halogen atom has a very high electronegativity. So in this case, we have two positive carbon atoms, and the reaction is not possible in this condition. We have a repulsion between these two carbon atoms. It's not possible any reaction. So we have to change the charge of this carbon atom. How? By using a metal, for example, magnesium. What happens when we put magnesium inside this halogen solution? We have the formation of a Grignard reagent, Cl, Mg, CH2, CH2, CH, sorry, 2 nitrogen, 1 black. Oh, there is one hydrogen here, I don't know why, but I don't like it. Why? So, okay. What here? Oh. I don't know why. No. Okay. In this case, in this reagent, there is a metal between the halogen and the carbon atom. In this case, the carbon atom has a higher electronegativity than that of the metal, of the magnesium. And so in this case, the charge of this carbon atom is partial negative. So now, in this condition, we can have an attack on the positive carbon of the ketone to give a tertiary alcohol. Then we see, just a moment. This one. Oops. No. No. Facciamo così. Qua. And here we have an alcohol. So we have an attack of the negative carbon atom to the positive carbon atom to give this tertiary alcohol. Tertiary alcohols are not stable in acidic environment. What happens? Once again, oxygen with its electrons can give an attack to the protons, formation of water, and a formation of a double bond instead of the alcoholic function. So we can see what happens. Here you see here, tac, 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 tac. And we have the formation of the double bond. Dehydration of tertiary alcohol is a method to have the double bond, if you remember in organic chemistry. Is one of the different methods to give an alkene, to give the double bond. So this synthesis is very simple. We start from a ketone, Grignard reaction, formation of a tertiary alcohol, dehydration, formation of the double bond. Have you any questions? Is it clear? So you can see how it's possible to have the formation of carbon-carbon bond by changing the charge of one of the two carbon atoms in order to have a negative carbon atom able to give an attack on the positive carbon atom. Have you any question at home? No? Okay. Okay, we can close now this chapter. Okay.
So,
Yes.
is there any scientific connection between depression and suicide?
Oh, please remember. Oh, I am that. Please.
I'm asking if there is any scientific connection between suicide and depression.
If there is
Is there any scientific proving background between suicide and depression?
Yes, but there is also a problem related to the use of these drugs. If you remember, we have seen some drugs able to increase the concentration of particular neurotransmitters. In particular, Prozac, if you remember, is one of the most famous drugs able to increase the serotonin. And in some patients, it was observed that they believed to be able to fly. And so a lot of people try to fly, but you can understand. And in the past, I had a student in my lab, really a very clever, very smart student, but she had the problem with depression. She used the Prozac, and during the night, they try to fly. And I asked her, why? Because, professor, I am able to fly, yes. I am convinced to be able. I am a superwoman, really. And I was astonished, you can imagine, because... And this is the problem of these drugs. You can have a suicide during the depression, of course, but also you can have not suicide, but they are convinced to be able to make everything. Some amphetamines were used during the Second World War in the soldier, in the German soldiers, to increase the potency, the forces, but also to disappear the fear. And so really, the scientists found a lot of documents about the synthesis of tones of amphetamines, and we can read the story of the Second World War in another way, because at the beginning the amphetamines are very potent for a period, but after this period our body has no more resources. So if you remember, German was very potent at the beginning, and then after 2 years of wars they had a problem. And there are some investigations that say, yes, perhaps the use of these drugs in that time was very common. And so we can make a different interpretation of the story of the Second World War, starting from the use of this type of drugs. So you understand that the problem of the use of these drugs is not simple. You can have suicide during the depression. You can have another type of suicide by using this type of compounds. So the two faces of the same medal, you know. Yes. Yes. But you can find, if you are interested, you can find a lot of documents on the web about the interpretation of the Second World War in this way. Yes. Okay. Opioid analgesics. This class of compounds is very important because by using this type of molecules, we can control the pain. And this can represent an important point during the therapy in hospital, for example, of terminal patients. But when we use this type of compounds, we have to pay a fee. The fee is represented by the development of tolerance. This means that we have to increase the dose of the treatment to have the same result. And so, week after week, we have to increase the dose, for example, of morphine, if you want to have a complete control of the pain. But there are also other complications during this treatment. After the tolerance, we can have also the addiction, the development of addiction. Addiction means that if you do not increase or do not assume the drug, you can have an abstinence syndrome. This means fever, headache, hyperalgesia. If you touch the patient on the skin, he has pain, just to understand. And withdrawal. The patients try in every way to find the drug, to assume the drug. Only after the assumption of the drug, he stays well. So you can understand that our goal, the main goal during the therapy is to control the pain, to have a pain control. But if we use this type of compound, we know that we'll have this type of complication. Otherwise, the pain control is important. And so it is important that medical doctors are able to manage this type of compound. This is the real problem. Oh, sorry. Google. So it is important how to manage this type of drugs. Here you can see some title in press, newspapers. In particular, you see this title, could a new drug target prevent tolerance and addiction to opioids? There is a strong research on this class of compounds, because if you are able to find the ideal painkiller, you can have a strong success on the market. And so the company really have a strong research activity in this field. Here you can see another title, Promising Advances in the Search for Safer Opioids. They try to modify, the companies try to modify the chemical structure of some of these compounds in order to avoid, for example, tolerance, addiction, withdrawal. But there is also a final terrible step, the block of the respiratory centers, like for barbiturates. So we start from a low dose, we have to increase the dose week by week, and then we can arrive after months to have a block of the respiratory centers, to have the inhibition. And so you can understand how these compounds are so dangerous. Here you can see another title, deaths due to opioid overdoses. Overdoses means that we can reach an high dose because we have to counteract the tolerance of the patient, and we reach the block of the respiratory centers. This is a typical way during the treatment in hospital. Otherwise, overdose can be reached by using street drugs because the concentration, perhaps inside, is too high. And so a guy can assume this street drug, and the high concentration is responsible of the block of the respiratory center. Here you can see the main symptoms of hydrocodone. Hydrocodone is one of the most famous painkiller of this class, a legal painkiller, because hydrocodone is sold in pharmacy, is used in hospital, so it is controlled. So we know exactly the dose, but you have to remember the addiction. When you start with the use of hydrocodone, you have to continue the assumption of this compound for a long time. You see the symptoms of overdose, in particular breathing. You see slowed, shallow, and stopped. Pupils widening, central sleepiness, loss of consciousness, skin, coldness, clamminess, blueness, okay, at the end. So this is a message for you just to know the problem when you manage this type of compound. What about physical pain? You know, physical pain after a small accident is what most people refer to when they say something hurts on their body and is associated with damage to tissues of their body. Okay, we know. Itching, burning. Pain is a defensive reaction, so it is important of our body to protect part of our body from external stimulus or damage. Most pain resolves promptly when the stimulus ends, but sometimes can persist. In particular, we have two types of pain. Nociceptive pain and neuropathic pain. Nociceptive is the most common pain. Usually itching or throbbing and well localized, okay. Time limited, but sometimes can be chronic. But generally responds to conventional analgesics. This is important. We can use, before the morphine derivatives, we can use non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents. Ibuprofen, for example, aspirin, you know. Normally, this type of pain responds to this class of compounds. Neuropathic, this is a serious problem. This pain is associated with numbness, always chronic condition, but overall it responds poorly to conventional analgesics. This is the problem. Neuropathic pain, it's difficult to treat. My wife had a lot of problem with headache in the past, and we used slow concentration of amitriptyline, really, because it is the first-class compound for neuropathic pain, an antidepressant. Perhaps it works, and in fact, in that time, we found this type of solution. And so really, this point is important. The pain control, you can imagine in the subject, in the patients, in the people, it is important. Because there is also an internal fear of pain. This morning, the pain starts from my foot and then perhaps can be stronger, and then I am worried because I have to take, so you know, all our, we can say, mental circuits, you know, during the day, but I have to work, and so I need a strong painkiller. Yes, okay. You can try hydrocodone, but you will have other problems. This is the question. Here you can see the perception of the pain. Why it is important, the perception? Because if we block in any way the perception of the pain, we can solve the problem. Yes. Perhaps the broken heart remain, broken bone remain, but the pain is solved. I remember the different ways of the pain transmission. If you remember, for example, a stimulus on the skin, there are the pain receptors, dorsal horn, synapses, and then the information can proceed towards the brain, where the information can be elaborated, and then we can have, you see, a reaction. This type of compounds, the derivative of morphine, are able to block the transmission of the pain. So we can eradicate the pain completely because the information is stopped. But also, this type of compounds are active on the limbic system, where the stimulus is processed, elaborated. So we block the pain in 2 points. The first point, we block the transmission of the pain. And the second point, we can block the elaboration of the pain in the CNS, in the limbic system. So, really, this compound are very potent, can solve all situations, but I remember you once again, we have to pay a fee.
Since they also act on the limbic system, do they also have mood disturbances as
Yes.
side effect?
On the mood, yes. You have no more fear of the pain. Heroin is so-called because it's an heroic drug. Heroic means it derives from morphine, but there is another interpretation. Heroin was used in the past during the First World War, when the soldier in that time had to go to attack the enemy positions. So you can understand what means heroin. You are a hero. No more fear. You know what is opium? Opium is the latex obtained by incision of the unripe capsules of Papaver somniferum. Perhaps you have already seen this picture during the course of botany. The latex that exudes from the incisions of immature Papaver somniferum capsules. So we have to collect this latex, this liquid. And which are the compounds inside this liquid? The composition is different for different Papaver subspecies, okay, but more or less we can find 5 important alkaloids: codeine, morphine, thebaine, very low. And all these 3 have the ability to act as painkiller. Papaverin and noscapine, they have another type of activity. They have muscle relaxant and other type of pharmacological activity. So we are interested only on these first 3 alkaloids: morphine, codeine, and thebaine. Morphine. The chemical structure of morphine is a complex structure. And Gulland and Robinson hypothesized its chemical structure, and they won the Nobel Prize for alkaloids investigations in 1925. And then the hypothesized chemical structure was confirmed by total synthesis. In the 50s, in some labs, they performed the total chemical synthesis of the morphine. 3 pages of steps. During my course, I had to study 3 pages of synthesis of the morphine. I remember when also today, I remember during the night. In that time, the scientists postulated the existence of different opioid receptors. Why? Because morphine has different effects. Painkiller, yes, but addiction, block of the respiratory center. So they thought that all these actions, different actions, are related to different receptors. But the problem is, these compounds interact with a particular receptor, yes. But the question in 1975 was, have we some compounds able to, internal compounds, endogenous compounds, able to interact with these receptors? This was the question. You know, if you make jogging every day, perhaps you can support the pain better. After the partum, women can forget very easily the pain. But why? In 1975, Hughes and Kosterlitz, these two scientists, isolated in the Guinea pig brain 2 pentapeptides called enkephalin. Very, very simple structure, 5 amino acids. We'll see the chemical structure of these 2 pentapeptides with a potent activity as painkiller. And so in that time, we had the answer. There are pain receptors. Okay, there are, receptors able to block the pain. And we have also endogenous compounds able to interact with these receptors. So it is possible, in some way, to have an increased release of this compound able to control the pain. Two important definitions: opioids and opiates. Opioids, an opioid is a substance, molecule, that is synthetic or partly synthetic. This means the active ingredients are created chemically. No natural sources, no alkaloids, nothing. It is a chemical compound synthesized in lab with the ability to kill the pain. Opiates. Opiates means natural derivatives from poppy plant, Papaver somniferum. So we can have an opioid, a synthetic compound able to interact with opioid receptors to act as painkiller, and then we can have opiates, which are natural compounds derived from opium, from the liquid of Papaver somniferum. So in the first class, we can find OxyContin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl is another important potent compound, and others. In the second class, we can find morphine, codeine, and the thebaine, and other. You see here the classification. What about morphine? Morphine is the prototype of this class. It is formed by 5 fused rings. If you see an aromatic ring called ring A, this ring is characterized by a phenolic function. You see this OH is on an aromatic ring, so it is a phenolic function. Ring B, aliphatic. Ring C, another aliphatic with one double bond. On the ring C, you can see another OH group, but in this case, the OH group is an alcoholic group. This OH group, this alcoholic group is different from the OH on the ring A, because the first is a phenolic function, the second is an alcoholic function. So A, B, C, ring B is a basic ring with a basic function, a nitrogen atom. It is an alkaloid. And then ring A is represented by this epoxide. You see this bridge, oxygen bridge. This is the molecule of morphine at first glance. And then we will explain better the chemical structure of morphine. And here you can see the chemical structure of the 2 pentapeptides of the 2 enkephalins, which belong to a bigger family called endorphins. So the 2 enkephalins, met enkephalin and the leu enkephalin. Met from methionine, because the last amino acid on the structure is a methionine, and the leu enkephalin, because the last amino acid is a leucine. It is important to know the chemical structure of these 2 pentapeptides. The first amino acid is tyrosine. Very important. Then we have 2 very simple molecule of the 2 very simple amino acidic molecules, 2 molecules of glycine. You know, glycine is the most simple amino acid. No asymmetric carbon atom. So very, very simple. So tyrosine, glycine, and then another aromatic amino acid, phenylalanine. Very similar to tyrosine, but without any phenolic OH. Same chemical structure, but no OH group on the ring. And then the last amino acids, methionine or leucine. So we have a structure with an aromatic amino acid at the beginning, two simple amino acid glycine molecules, and then a phenylalanine, important. As I told you before, a lot of investigation were performed on this molecule in order to understand the structure-activity relationships of this compound, just to design potent molecules with the painkiller activity. And we'll see that these two glycines are only a spacer. They can serve as to maintain to the right distance the two aromatic amino acids, tyrosine and phenylalanine. And the question is, why we cannot use this molecule as drugs? Why it is necessary to take morphine instead of methamphetamine or leukoencephalin? Because you know that peptides are not stable in the blood. They can be hydrolyzed by our enzyme system, digestion. So you see a lot of amidic bond that can be hydrolyzed very easily by our enzymes. So when these compounds are released in our body, the activity is very fast, only a few seconds. So several people, several scientists try to make modifications of the amide bonds to stabilize these molecules against our metabolism, but no results at the moment. Here you can see a lot, not all, several precursors of these two peptides. This precursor represents the family of endorphins. You see a long series of amino acids, but the first 5 amino acids in all of these precursors, the first 5 are the same series of the leu and methamphetamine. This means that, for example, nociceptin is a precursor because all these chains protect from the hydrolysis the first 5. You see, or in this case, TIR, GLI, you see the first 5. So there is a sort of protection of the first 5 amino acids, and only these 2 amino acids are able to give the anti-pain activity. So all these compounds are considered peptide neurotransmitters. We have seen a lot of neurotransmitters, adrenaline, noradrenaline, serotonin, a lot. But in this case, we have a peptide structure. Okay, here you can see some structure-activity relationships of this compound that we have already described. So tyrosine 1 is essential, it's important. The phenolic OH is important. Okay, once again, you see, first, tyrosine is essential, but also phenylalanine in the fourth position is essential. So these two aromatic amino acids are very important, are essential for the activity. And also the two glycines are important as a spacer between these two aromatic amino acids. You can see that these peptides are formed by a long chain with a lot of conformations, and so we don't know the active conformations of these compounds towards the different opioid receptors. So it is not possible to design an agonist of this type of compounds. But why we can say that morphine is able to interact with the same receptors of these two pentapeptides? Here you can see in red the chemical structure of morphine, and in blue the first tyrosine of the two pentapeptides. You can see a complete overlap of the tyrosine residue on the chemical structure of morphine. Inside the morphine, we can see the phenolic group with the aromatic ring, and then we can see once again the basic residue of tyrosine. But in the structure of morphine, we can find the chemical structure of another neurotransmitter that we have already seen. Aromatic ring, 2OH, ethyl chain, basic group. This is the chemical structure of dopamine. So this means that morphine has a dopamine activity, is able to interact with dopamine receptors, and this fact explains the side effect of morphine, which is vomiting. Because if you remember, the dopaminergic agonist of peripheric receptors, dopaminergic receptors, are able to cause the vomiting. So really, you should be able to see in this complex molecule the active fragments. So we can see the fragments of dopamine, ring A, the ethyl bridge basic function, but also we can see the residues of tyrosine. In fact, we'll see how it is possible to simplify the chemical structure of morphine. We'll see that it is possible to have more simple molecule with the same activity. And who were the scientists which investigated the simplification of the chemical structure of morphine? German scientists during the Second World War. Why? If you remember, the opium is cultivated, Papaver somniferum is cultivated in India, Afghanistan, Pakistan. And in that time, these countries were under UK. And so, for different time, the German, in that time, did not receive any opium from India. But they, in that time, they need to have this type of compounds to control the pain in the soldier, in the first line during the war. And so the scientists, German scientists, investigated the chemical structure of morphine and simplified its structure by discovering methadone. We'll see the chemical structure, how we can modify, we can simplify the chemical structure of morphine. Okay, we can stop for 20 minutes. Have you any questions? No? No? Atom, have you any questions? No? Okay. quella sta riunione che non so. Dai, l'ultima ormai stiamo finendo. Ce la faremo. Allora, eravamo. Ok. So, dear students, we start again. As I told you before, this type of pentapeptide with a painkiller activity are not stable and can be hydrolyzed on the amidic bonds by specific peptidases, metallopeptidases, you see. But how morphine, how these two pentapeptides, metencaphalin and leoencaphalin acts, how are able to block the pain transmission? It is important to know that in the synapses, here, I show you again, here, in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, in this type of synapses, there is the release of a particular neuropeptide able to transmit the pain information. This neuropeptide is called neuropeptide P. You see here the chemical structure. Is formed by 11 amino acids and morphine and enkephalins are able to block the release of this particular neurotransmitter. In fact, if you see here in the small picture, you see the opioid receptor where interact morphine and our enkephalins. And after the activation of this type of receptors, we can observe the opening of a channel in which the potassium ions can be effluxed. So we have an increased efflux of potassium or positive charge from the cells of the neurons, and in this way we have an increased stabilization of the membrane. So we can block the release of the neuropeptide P, and so we block the information, the pain transmission. Other action related to the release of neuropeptide P is the muscle relaxation, vasodilation, some hormonal secretions, and so on. You see here in yellow the effect of the activation of the opioid receptors. In particular, we can see the opening of potassium channels and the closure of the voltage gate calcium channels of nerve, resulting hyperpolarization and strong inhibition of nerve firing. So we block the transmission of the action potential. This is the mechanism of our agonist on opioid receptor. Once again, you have in this picture the explanation of the all steps of the release of this neuropeptide inside the synaptic cleft. You see the biosynthesis, microtubule transport, processing by peptidases, the storage inside the vesicles, the release and the interaction with the postsynaptic receptors, and then the metabolism by peptidases. But there is one important aspect to underline. It is not found a mechanism of reuptake of this neurotransmitter. So when we have this case, we can say that this compound is not a neurotransmitter, but it is a neuromodulator. Because if you see here, just a moment, you see here, the requirements for a neurotransmitter are biosynthesis, accumulation, release, interaction with the specific receptors, and the mechanism of termination, metabolism or absorption. In this case, there is no any reuptake system, only metabolization. So we can better define this compound as neuromediators instead of neurotransmitters. You can see here the entire description of the events inside the synaptic cleft. So what happens during the pain transmission. Here you see my personal draw. You see the neuron, the sensory neuron here. Postsynaptic, you see the information, the pain information goes in this direction. And here you can see an enchefalinergic neuron with the release of P substances, and then the release of P substances is in the synapses. Sorry, this is a inhibitory enchefalinergic neuron, and so in particular in these synapses, the enkephalins are released, and enkephalin can act on the presynaptic junction. These enkephalins can stabilize the presynaptic neuron in order to block the release of P substances in the main synapses. You see here these receptors which respond to enkephalins. So these receptors are post-synapsis if we see the enchefalinergic neuron, post-synaptic, but are located on a presynaptic fiber. So we have to see where we are. If we are on the enchefalinergic neuron, we see the postsynaptic receptors located on a presynaptic fiber. And in this position, there are the opioid receptors and the receptors which respond to morphine. But we have to stabilize the presynaptic fiber in order to block the release of P substances on this postsynaptic neuron. So you see it's a complex picture, but you can see where are the enchefalinergic neurons able to stabilize the presynaptic fiber. So we block the transmission on the pain information. Is it clear, this picture? Okay. There is another aspect. Also, endorphins and enkephalins are responsible of tolerance and dependence. Probably these compounds are released in particular physiological conditions, stress, pain stimuli, partum, and other. These compounds interact also in the hypothalamic area. But there is another important point here in the last line. The use of morphine derivatives limits the biosynthesis and release of enkephalins. This means that when you use this type of compound, morphine, you can have a limitation in the biosynthesis and the release of endogenous enkephalins. So this means that when you finish to stop the assumption of morphine, you have an hyperalgesia because you have no more endogenous enkephalins. This is an important point. It is like a negative feedback. If you take morphine, you can have a negative feedback in the formation and biosynthesis of endogenous enkephalins. No mechanism of reuptake, already said. So we can define this compound, enkephalin, as neuromediators. Here you can see the point where enzymes can hydrolyze these enkephalins. You see on the first amide bond between the tyrosine and the first glycine, or between the last glycine and the phenylalanine. These type of enzymes are called the proteases. They are zinc acceptor metal inside their structure. Once again, you can see all the way of the pain information. Once again, you see the noxious stimulus. You see the first order neuron, which are able to transmit the information in the spinal cord, where there is the first synapses, and then we have the second order of neuron responsible of the transmission inside the CNS, the brain. As I told you before, morphine is able to act inside at the thalamus level, inside the thalamus. So it is able to eliminate the emotional aspect of pain. Receptors classification. So we have seen the ability of the enkephalins to interact with opioid receptors. These opioid receptors are able to stabilize the presynaptic fiber by a strong efflux of potassium channels from the neurons. And so we have a hyperpolarization of the neuron membrane. The scientists tried to identify the different types of opioid receptors. Why? Because they believe that it was possible to design a specific, a selective ligand, a selective agonist, in order to avoid the side effects related to tolerance, dependence, block of respiratory centers, and so on. So the companies, the scientists, better, try to distinguish the different receptor subtypes because they believe that a particular subtype was responsible of the side effects and another subtype was responsible of the painkiller activity. But it is not true. All the three receptor subtypes are involved in the side effects, in the severe side effects. And so nowadays we have no any agonist of opioid receptors without these side effects. It is not possible. I saw on the journals that several companies are still working on this topic, but at the moment no new compounds are available on the market without this severe side effect. You can see here the mechanism of opioid receptor. Opioid receptor are G-protein coupled receptor. So you know the G-protein. In particular, we have an increased activity of cycle AMP. And at the moment, 3 subtypes are identified: OP1, OP2, and OP3. OP from opium. This is the more recent classification. In the past, we defined these 3 subtypes in delta, kappa, and mu. These are Greek letters, if you know. Delta from vas deferens, because this type of subtypes was found in the vas deferens of rats. K, kappa, K, from ketazochine. Ketazochine is a derivative of morphine, selective for these subtypes. And mu is M, from morphine, because morphine is quite selective for this subtype. These receptors were cloned, and so we know, you see the chemical, the primary chemical structure, the different amino acids which form the receptors, but we know only the primary structure, and so only the series of the different amino acids. You see delta, kappa, and mu. You see the inhibition of adenylate cyclase, activation of potassium efflux, inhibition of channeling flux, and so we have a stabilization of the membrane, of the neuromembrane. Localization of the different subtypes. There is also this NOP is an orphan receptor, perhaps nociceptin, but at the moment it is not considered in this big family of the opium receptor. You see also key selective agonist, key selective antagonist. Two compounds are important. You see naloxone and naltrexone. All morphine derivatives are normally agonists. So they are able to activate mu, kappa, and delta receptors. Naloxone and naltrexone are two antagonists, able to interact with the receptors, but they are not able to activate this type of receptors. Why these two compounds are so important? Because in case of overdose, we can save the life of a patient by the administration of these two antagonists. These two compounds can be present in pharmacy, in a pharmacy, because perhaps a medical doctor can ask these compounds to save the life of a patient, of a guy in the street. And so these two compounds are important to prevent the inhibition of the respiratory center in case of overdose. So we have already described the role of the opioid receptors in the modulation of pain. Opioid receptors are present in hypothalamus, where they influence the regulation. Okay, this is an important factor. Regulation of temperature. We have said that in case of abstinence, in case in a patient, we have an increase in temperature because this compound interact with the regulation center of temperature and also in the control of hormonal secretion. They also can influence the mood. They can have a fundamental role in anxiety, emotional expression. Another important point is their activity on gastrointestinal tract. Morphine derivatives are able to block the movements of the intestine. So in case of strong diarrhea, this compound can be used maledizione di Montezuma. You know, when you go in Egypt or in other countries, normally the first 2 days you have a problem, intestine problem, and so they use this type of compounds. My grandfather was a veterinary, and he used opium powder to treat the diarrhea in the cows. And so you can imagine the cows can assume opium, they stay better with the intestine, but also with the brain. Yes. But there is an important compound, loperamide dicentenis, called in Italy. It's a modification of the chemical structure of morphine. So we'll see. But its activity is limited only on the intestine, on the intestine, and not on the brain. It's not able to cross the blood-brain barrier. We see. The analgesic activity is related to the interaction with these three classes of opioid receptors: mu, kappa, and delta. Mu receptors. Other two subtypes, mu1 and mu2, they are located in the spinal cord, central interpretation of pain, CNS. MU2 are responsible of the respiratory depression, spinal analgesia, physical dependence, and euphoria. So you see, it's not possible to split, to divide the side effects from the main effect, from the therapeutical effect. This is the point. We have painkiller activity together with all these side effects. Naloxone, you see, is an important antagonist. Key receptor. Also, these receptors are implicated in analgesia, diuresis, neuroendocrine secretion. Key agonists, and this is an important point, key agonists do not cause respiratory depression. So for years, the companies tried to design key selective agonists, but without success. No compounds on the market. Delta receptors, delta from vas deferens, you see D. Also these subtypes are involved in analgesia, motor coordination, intestinal motility, olfaction, respiration, cognitive function. So every type of receptor subtypes is involved in the same activity, and so it's not possible to split, to divide the side effect from the anti-pain effect. Opioid agonist. Just a brief introduction, and then we'll describe this class next time. Opioid agonist, narcotic analgesics. They're responsible of analgesia, respiratory depression, drowsiness, light sleep, mood change, thalamus, nausea and vomiting, dopamine receptors activation. We have already seen the molecule of dopamine inside morphine. Meiosis, the eye. Cough reflex depression. This type of compounds, in particular codeine, is a potent cough reflex inhibitor. So in case of a strong cough, if you want to limit the insultant to the breath airways, we can use this type of compounds, codeine in particular. Also, these opioid agonists are able to develop tolerance and dependence, and constipation. Constipation is the block of the intestinal muscles, and so they can block the activity of the intestine in the case of strong diarrhea. So the therapeutic uses include the treatment of deep and persistent pain, chronic pain, first, and then treatment of cough and treatment of diarrhea. These are the three main therapeutic indications of this class of compounds. But we have to pay the fee. Respiratory depression is one of the most serious side effects. Is due to a direct effect on the breathing centers. So during the therapy, we can increase the dose, but we can reach the toxic concentration with the block of the breathing centers, of the respiratory centers. This is the problem. Indication, treatment of deep and persistent pain without loss of consciousness. So you can work, you can continue to work without altering sensory modalities. They increase the pain threshold by eliminating associated emotional factors. Other side effects, nausea and vomiting, caused by direct stimulation of the peripheral dopaminergic receptors. Constipation when you use this type of compounds. We have the block of the movement of the intestine muscles. And finally, development of tolerance and dependence with the onset of withdrawal syndrome. Okay, you see also the withdrawal syndrome. If the patient does not assume this type of compound, he tries to find this compound in every way. This is the problem. Okay, vediamo un attimo. Oh, just 2 minutes. Yes, okay. Dependence is needed for a drug to maintain normal physiological, psychological functioning. State of illness lead to often uncontrollable drug craving. The patient or the guy tried to find this type of compound. Drug-seeking behavior. It is not easy, the detoxification from this type of compounds. You see here the pattern of the opiate withdrawal timeline. At the beginning, after 72 hours, we had the physical symptoms at the peak. Chills, fever, body aches, diarrhea, insomnia, muscle pain, nausea, dilated pupils. And then 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, we have a decrease of these symptoms. But after 1 month, cravings and depression. This is the problem. It's not easy to stop, to finish the assumption of this type of drugs. And then, the last slide for today, Johnson & Johnson to pay a lot of millions of dollars for fueling Oklahoma opioid crisis. What happened some years ago? Johnson & Johnson introduced on the market the use of hydrocodone, if I don't remember, with Duragesic and Nucynta. You see the commercial name of these two compounds, as painkillers, potent painkillers. But the addiction was not reported on the box. And so the result is that opioids have been prescribed in record numbers. You see 18 million prescriptions in 3 years for a population of 4 million. This is the result, leading to thousands of overdoses, deaths, 6,000, and addictions of all people. This is the problem. No pain, yes, but we have to pay a fee. You see, this is a case of, this is the result of the large use of this type of compound. You see also here the deaths from opioid overdoses. You see the increased number of deaths. Okay, so we start next time with the structure-activity relationships of morphine. Then we'll see how it's possible to simplify the chemical structure of morphine. Have you any questions here in classroom? Have you any question at home? No?